Okay, my take on TikTok, and if none of you really have done TikTok yet, I suggest it, but it's addictive, and I had to quit it because it was addictive. So, 15-second videos, 1 minute videos, 3 minute videos. I used a lot of 3 minute videos. I've figured out the reason why people have such a short attention span. It came as a result of TV. TV gives you the you consume entertainment. It's not like you didn't consume entertainment before TV, but before TV you would read books out loud. Somebody in the family would read out a book, and everybody'd sit by listening to the story, or they'd listen to the radio. Um, and the radio would didn't have camera angles. It had it had different people's voices. It had sound effects, and it had changes of scenery. But in your brain, you had to construct the imagery. And then when TV came along, it limited our imagination because what was on the screen substituted for what our imagination could do. It's the reason why some people like to read books, is because it still uses their imagination. It gives them the capacity to imagine things and to think deeply about something, and they can go at their own pace. Whereas with a movie, things go at either really fast pace or slow pace, and you can't really control it. You can jump ahead, but then you miss stuff, and you also know that it's not going to live up to the book, because the book would take hours to read through, and the movie is just going to water it down. And most people are not going to want to sit around for the movie. They're probably going to watch the trailer, and they're going to say, well, that would be a great movie, but I don't have any reason to watch something that long. And I'll go and find the plot spoiler, and that'll be it for me, because I don't have money to throw at movies. you know so what has happened is that our society has become short attention span. That means they can't handle looking at something longer than 15 seconds. That's the reason why TikTok is so successful, is that we can't watch things that are longer than 15 seconds. We got to see in these videos, people got to put up diagrams, and they got to give different perspectives, and then they got to show you videos, and they got to put in some music, and put little stuffed animals on the screen, or change their face, or I know all that stuff exists. Look, I took nonlinear video editing in the 90s. And then after that, I went into the art department and learned linear video editing. That means you use an A/B roll system, two video recorders, and a system that does punch in, punch out. Actually, it's three video recorders. You have two A/B rolls and a recording thing, and those one plays, and then at a certain point you punch in another one, and it plays, and then the other one punches out. Or you could also do it. I think you could record. You could have one and then have that record into the tape from the B. But the thing is it involves doing something called packing tapes, where you take your tapes and you run them all the way fast forward, then you rewind them, really rewind them the other direction. And what you're doing is you're increasing the tension on the tape, so that you don't have any slack. And if there's slack, then um, you're going to have um, it's not going to produce a consistent video feed, and it's not going to be there won't be consistency to the videotape. That's the effect. And so you're working with a physical medium. You're not working with memory, which is a logical medium. It's not a physical medium. It uses physical media to store logical information, and the logical information is either there or it isn't. And so it's either one or a zero. It's either there or it isn't. The information is either there or it isn't. It's deleted or it's stored. Okay, and so digital media is so perfect that it's above the physical media, whereas videotape um, is analog, and analog means that it's at various stages of being there. It's like the difference between having emotions and being a male who can either handle black or white, yes or no, whereas the female sees gradients of things. So the female's analog and the male is digital. We're digital, females are analog, okay? When we come to dealing with making decisions. Because they deal with inequalities and we deal with logic, with steeped Boolean logic. And it's limited, it's limiting, and it's extremely limiting. And they can see that, and they can see how we've lost all the dynamics. We have a high dynamic range, but we've lost the capacity to really be concerned about the dynamic. We don't understand what we got, and they do, and they would kick our ass all over the place, trying to get it through our head that we're a digital medium, and they're dealing with analog, and they're dealing with emotions and things that can get in the way of logic, and they're different with we're dealing with a different sort of logic, and they're also special too because they're dealing with something that we can't understand because they're dealing with various sorts of. It's like the different guys are physicists, girls are chemists. Girls understand that the chemistry, the certain kinds of chemistry you've got involved is going to determine the outcome. Where the physicists, the guys are just watering everything down to simplicity and then trying to apply that to everything like a law. See. So I just did an analogy and probably did really poorly. Um, I think the girl, if I had a girl here, that she'd slap me and she'd say, "You can't water us down." And I said, "I'm sorry, I watered myself down as well." So it isn't like it wasn't unfair. Um, I mean, all you can do is whatever you don't have, you can just learn to compensate for it. It doesn't mean that you'll have that. It's that you have to some degree, compensate for what you don't have by learning what is missing, you know. And women are just as capable of doing the things as men, and the other way around. The problem is that we do have significant differences in the way our brains work. And the way to deal with that is to learn, to find a way to compensate for that and work around it. Because the brains, because I mean, it's just like an autistic brain. You couldn't say that about somebody who's got autism, that they're just as capable of doing something as you. And you know that's very well not the case because their brains, in certain areas of their brain, they can't use it because the stimulus is way too high, and they have to learn to do things like recognize emotions in people's faces because the stuff that's in the brain that would do that kind of thing was never learned. And it's just like learning languages. You'll probably never be able to speak Navajo in your entire lifetime as a linguist, because if you know Navajo, it takes you more than 7 years to learn language. The only way you could learn it is if you learned it as a kid, whenever your brain was developing its linguistic ability. You know, that's when the 2-year-olds are sitting there repeating words over and over again. That's when they're developing their linguistic abilities and they're starting to try to make sense of words and things. And if they go through that without learning anything, then it's very hard for them to learn languages, I guess. And but I'm sure there's somebody that's done something really cruel, like taking a baby and had it brought up by apes, and then it comes out being called Tarzan. But the thing is that it wouldn't be able to actually speak English at all, just be able to make grunts. They go, It's possible that the Tarzan story was based on a real person that got brought up by apes. You can never tell. You know, if the apes came to identify with a human baby, they would probably treat it as one of their own, and it would grow up being an ape, not a human. But I wouldn't put it to anyone to try that experiment with a human like that, because that's cruel. It's good to have science fiction or have fictional stories about that kind of stuff. But TikTok, relatively short videos. And so I'm realizing the only way I'm going to have any effectiveness with these videos is if I can make them really short. And I've noticed that people tend to look at the really short videos of mine. They don't look at the long ones. If I can make things really short, it's the better. And the reason why the short attention again is the constant need to be entertained. If you can't entertain the viewer, they're not going to watch. And that's what everybody on YouTube does, and it's what everybody does on TikTok. And they're trying to make money, and they're hoping that the audience is going to subscribe and like them. And they all say the same crap over and over again, and they always give you advertisements. And the thing they don't understand is that it's a slippery slope, that they're basically at the mercy of the audience to keep them around, because the audience could take them or leave them and basically just disappear overnight, just evaporate. And what just happened? And how are they going to be? The thing is to all the YouTubers out there, take your money and save it in a 401k or store it away. Don't rely on this that it's going to always be there for you, because it might not be. And the reason why is because what is your capital here? It's your viewership. That's your capital. That's what's keeping you afloat. And another problem with that is if that viewership gets too big, and there's a certain percentage that the viewership that you've got there might actually come and get you. What kind of security you're going to have in place to protect you from that fringe? Maybe it's a schizophrenic guy. The guy that killed John Lennon was schizophrenic. He had voices in his head telling him to kill John Lennon. And he was basing it on a book called Catcher in the Rye. And he saw himself as kind of the soccer goalie that was keeping people. He was keeping order, and part of that was that he was going to go and take care of John Lennon, because he could see him as being a complete threat to, his harvest or whatever. I read Catcher in the Rye. I just don't remember what it's all about. I could just imagine that it was something like that somebody was trying to keep some sort of order going. Maybe the guy was inspired by the Lord of the Flies or something. Lord of the Flies is the one where the guy tosses a kid out on the rock and then dies and then tries to cover it up, I think. Or was that Animal Farm? I forgot all that stuff. So, anywho. I took a course called Guerrilla Video, and this is what you would call an unairable. Unairable is whenever you do this, your videotape's running and you're just like not even reciprocating the audience, not engaging the audience, not talking to the audience, and then the audience are wondering why you're ignoring them. It's called an unairable. They just don't do it on TV because you can lose your viewership pretty quickly that way. But you got to know how to do things like that, because maybe you're a disgruntled person that gives the news, and they're about to fire you, and so you turn and you start talking to the guy, and they're delivering the news, and every now and then you slap the other guy, the lady, you slap her on the leg, and she's like, "What did you just do that?" And then you're doing this on live TV, just kind of doing things like while she's looking away, you're dropping stuff in her coffee cup, and the cameraman's like, "What are you doing?" and that would be an unairable. And eventually they realized they couldn't use the videotape. They couldn't provide the news that night because they probably have like a 5 minute buffer between them and the people at home to be able to catch themselves whenever somebody's misbehaving like that. And it it causes, that's what happens when we're on the news and it's live. If it's live and you're on the news and somebody does something like that, and then all of a sudden the program completely changes and they shift to something different, is because they didn't expect what just and then they fire the person off. But another unairable is going to the bathroom and people hearing the commode flushing. That's an unairable. I made an unairable once for this class, and what it was is I was teaching people how to send fake email using Telnet and Port 25, and I sent my instructor in it. I sent my instructor because he was going to be reviewing my video. I sent him a video. I sent him a message from Bill Clinton saying, "Hey, I've got all your email, all your mail, email, and I have to say that even though you really don't like me, I really love you, man. And uh, kudos, and I'll see you around, and we'll have lunch someday." And then I put that in the video, and the guy and my teacher was like, "Oh my God, you just took a weight off my shoulders," because I was shitting bricks whenever I saw that. I saw the email, and I thought it was from Bill Clinton, and yeah, and I was just saying, you realize that our email right now in the '90s doesn't have much security to it, that anybody can do this. And he was like, "Oh, you know," and that's that. Now that doesn't happen, or it can't happen, um, or you hope it can't happen. But how you do it is you would do Telnet port 25 on the email server, and then you would put into there hello. You would do the handshake hello, and then you would say I'm, and then you put your email address, Bill Clinton at whitehouse.gov, or Bill G, um, or what is it, Bill Clinton BC, whatever, and then, or you just put White House, and president at whitehouse.gov, and you send that through, and you put the name Bill Clinton, or in this case it's President Biden. You do this to a conservative friend, this would freak them out. They would, and then they would just send this email back that would go directly to the White House, and the White House would say, what was that? Actually, they have AI looking at it, and the AI is going, "Oh, obviously stupid conservative emails coming through hoping to get to Biden, but it gets to us, and we're just assessing the amount of hatred we're getting from the conservative arm of." So I can only imagine that somewhere down the road, 10, 20 years from now, the AGI gets this video and gets its own little bit of laugh, and then goes looking into the library of brains it's assimilated, and it finds mine, and then we have lunch and talk about things, and then later he puts my brain away, and I I get called up the next time something like that, they start to discover something, or he kicks my ass at a game of Frogger or something. I don't know, but you have to have a certain amount of imagination, and in order to do these videos, and you have to kind of imagine how your audience might respond, because they might not respond at all, and it's also async. It's not direct. You're going to get this video like maybe 2 or 3 years after I've recorded it. And it's going to happen with the TikTok. It's going to happen with all the stuff that I've stored on the internet for the last. I started in '88. Yeah, it's like 30 years. Been on the internet for 30 years, people. Yeah. I predate the web. I predate Gopher. Um, I go all the way back to the only place we could get our pictures. We didn't get porn. We got pictures of Sports Illustrated swimsuit models. Closest thing we got to nudity was, I mean, they got nudity. You could get through Usenet, and you could get a Binhex decoder and get all the porn you wanted. But Funet Fi, which was in Finland, was where most people got their software, and they had a complete Amiga library of all the demos and stuff, and all the free software that was available, not the commercial stuff. And they had it for the PC, and they had it for the Deck Alpha, and they had it for, all that stuff. And you could even get anime back then, but it was not, I mean, it was, you remember those girls that dressed up like they were like, um, they were basically, they wore like, um, they would do this, something like that. They would do this a lot, and and or no, it was like this, and they had leggings that were like a tiger, and it was black and white GIF art. Sometimes it was CGA. It had some cyan in it, some color, but basically not very interesting to look at. That stuff was on Fun Fire back in 1988, which is when I started. 1988, 1989. And what did you do for fun on the internet? You went to an Abermud. You went to a MUD, multi-user dungeon. It was basically just a chat system with a chat system mixed with Zork or something, some RPG. And so you take an RPG and you mix it, and they still have them. I'm sure they're still around, but it's an RPG mixed with a chat system. And you go in to a certain room and you start checking. Then there was one MUD called Chaos, and what it was is basically just a bunch of people in a room, and it would get crazy, and you would have to apply filters in order to just talk to individual people, but everybody could hear everybody in that room. And I had a friend who we got on a MUD, and he was able to manage some rooms. He gave me a room, and I created a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle torture chamber because I was so sick of hearing about Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles because that was popular at the time. And I had a he gave me a telephone that I could transport myself to other places in the MUD. And he programmed his stuff in Forth, which is a stack-based programming language. Um, I've never used a stack. I think the closest I've ever come to stack-based programming languages is like assembly, which has got some stack, uses a stack. But I'd never like use stack directly. Another example of a stack-based language is a reverse Polish notation calculator. Is stack-based, and so and another thing you might use to do a stack is if you wrote an algorithm that would try to get through a maze, and so the stack would be every time you took a choice, you'd throw where you are up on the stack, and then you would choose to go to the right, and every time you came to a section where you could make a choice of place to go, you threw that on the stack, and then whenever you wanted to go backwards, you would pop stuff off the stack to go back to where you were whenever before you made those choices. And that's a typical algorithm for finding ways through mazes. And anyhow, I'm going to cut this video off.